It's Halloween, so let's talk about fear. Specifically in children's media. As a child creature, fear was a big part of my life, unfortunately. And honestly, still kind of is. These days, my crippling fears are boring, like death and taxes. But when I was a kid, they were all over the place. I made a video a few years ago about my weird specific fear of Mario 64, and I came to the conclusion that the reason that game was so spooky to me, besides my brother torturing me with it, was that it introduced me to the concept of Uncanny Valley, which, considering all my other fears as a kid, does make a lot of sense, honestly. Like, don't get me wrong, more traditionally scary things still gave me some serious anxiety. Like, God, do you remember how obnoxious the CVS Halloween aisle used to be? They'd pack it full of that motion-censored Halloween junk that would just jump scare you if you were within like 5 feet of it. It made it very difficult to get those really cute Peanuts figures they sold. But I'm realizing that a lot of the strongest senses of fear and dread I had as a kid came from the very uncanny and strange things I'd encounter in my life. For example, animatronics and big character costumes really freaked me out, to a point where my mom would have to drag me by my ankles to go to a Chuck E. Cheese birthday party. And God, there was this grocery store called Stu Leonard's where they had a bunch of animatronic animals for specific sections of their store, and I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I would actually literally just rather bake in the hot car while my parents grocery shopped than have to get near that robot cow in the dairy aisle. Fuck that. Honestly, looking at videos of this place, I don't blame my younger self at all. I still wouldn't have a good time here at 28 years old. There was this strange sense of reality disconnect these things gave me. Like they weren't supposed to be moving, but they were. And it looks just weird enough to be off, but real enough to be tangible. And it doesn't help that I didn't really understand how these things moved in the first place. But honestly, I was probably better off not knowing that. De-skinned animatronics are some of the most fucked up looking things to me, still to this day. Ugh. Reasons why Five Nights at Freddy's will forever be on my I will die before experiencing this media list. Too close to home for me. Anyways, I'm very much stalling because we're going to talk about Angela Anaconda. If you were watching cartoons in the early 2000s, this show probably exists as some weird, wicked fever dream in your head. It didn't air a ton in America and was usually only on at weird hours on Nickelodeon. Or you may remember it for that weirdo shit that introduced the English dub of the Digimon movie. Either way, it has a way of sticking to your brain like glue. For some reason. Who knows why, really. It came on so infrequently that it really did have this really uncanny feeling, like it was something that wasn't supposed to be airing. And when it did air, my memories of it aren't exactly pleasant. So for Halloween, I'm going to give this show a chance, and maybe in the process figure out why this specifically freaked me out so much. Even though it's probably pretty obvious.
There's something about Angela.
So, a little background. This show was created by Joanna Ferrone and Sue Rose. They're pretty well known for creating that dude Fido Dido. You've probably seen him around. Angela was originally aired on Kablam, which, makes so much damn sense. If you don't know, Kablam was this variety show on Nickelodeon that sort of specialized in these weird, off-kilter art styles. Honestly, it's one of the coolest shows that network ever had on air. And Angela Anaconda feels pretty at home on a show like that. It's basically just a shorter version of the normal show, with some different character designs for sure. Anyways, fuck you, Kablam, for actually budgeting this absolute fuck... Okay, no, stop. I like Kablam. I do like Kablam. I think the show works on Kablam. Ugh. Sorry, my brain just really wants to hate this show so bad. But anyways, let's start the show proper with a theme song sung by Angela Anaconda herself.
My name is Angela, hey hello, welcome to my very own show, I'll introduce my friends to you.
Oh, yeah, not a good first impression. Purposely annoying and grating. It, fits the vibe of the show, but yeah, not exactly an earworm. So yeah, Angela Anaconda is about, you guessed it, Angela Anaconda, a quirky elementary school kid who is, quirky, I don't know. There isn't a lot to her beyond her having a sort of an active imagination and being really spiteful, but I'll get into that later. Angela is joined by her classmates, a pretty eclectic group of pals she hangs out with, like Gina Lash and And her dog, I can't hold it back anymore. Why does this show look like this? What is with this art style? Why is with this art style? So in a lot of ways, this series is kind of similar in art style to something like South Park, actually, using a sort of paper craft looking thing with characters being made of individual pieces that move around like paper dolls. But you may have noticed a little detail that's, their faces. Yeah, the show uses real-ass pictures of real-ass children for all of the faces of the characters, having a few angles and expressions, but mostly being manipulated via some weird-looking Photoshop morphing. And, of course, the show kind of retains sort of these cartoony proportions when it comes to the characters, so they're photoshopping bigger ears on some characters, morphing noses and faces, even eyes sometimes. Ugh. And, not only that, but every character has this weird, colorless skin. Almost as if the photos are old or out of some newspaper or something. It is weird, and maybe just to me, but kind of unsettling. Something about the mix of real-life elements and cartoon elements is just really awkward. They really only have like 3 angles, a side profile, 3/4 angle, and front-facing, but I'd say like 90% of the time, the characters are using their front-facing faces. And they move the pupils around less frequently than I want them to, so the characters kind of just always are staring into your soul. Real faces of real people are frequently staring directly at you in this cartoon. Like, just a fun little fact about filmmaking, unless you're doing like a documentary or some kind of presentation, having your characters look directly at the camera is weird. Or at least will feel as if the character is looking at you, the viewer. And I don't know about you, but the feeling as if these mixed up, photoshopped, elastic reality looking human cartoon hybrid creatures are directly looking at me, real life me, is freaky, to say the very least. The kids are the main cast in the show, and they obviously look very strange, but the adults are where the show really goes hard on these anomaly designs. Some of the adults look so weird, like they were drawn and designed as cartoon characters first, and real-life people were just morphed into the silhouette of the character. And the animals are fucking scary too. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, Okay, I've been holding this in for nearly like 30 years. I think this design choice is ugly. Very, very ugly. But that being said, I'm also an artist. Part of my brain really wants to understand and appreciate this art style for what it is, which I think I kinda do. Like, it's supposed to come off really jarring and odd. It's consistent with the rest of the show's personality. It really reminds me of this art style they use in the game Grim Fandango. In that game, the humans have this really strange, paper cutout look using magazine clippings and newspaper clippings for most of the faces, all very morphed and deformed. And I absolutely love it in that game. And that's because when you're in the human world, everything is supposed to look ugly. Literally, Manny has a comment about how gross he thinks humans are when he's there, and it juxtaposes to how appealing and nice all of the World of the Dead characters look, throwing our expectations on their head and using this aesthetic to have some kind of meta commentary on how us humans actually look on the outside. And, I don't know, just a hunch, I don't think Angela Anaconda was supposed to make me find children disgustingly uncanny or strange. Or maybe it was. Either way, it does a pretty dang good job of that. I think this choice in style came from a place of wanting to stand out, and that is definitely where a lot of the old Kablam styles come from. And hey, I'm all for new and unique ways to display animation, but Angela Anaconda doesn't feel very artsy about it, if I'm being honest. Like, compare it to something else on Kablam, Life with Loopy. It's super unique. It uses a mix of stop motion and live actors and puppets, and for the faces they use these cutout papercraft things, almost the opposite of Angela Anaconda actually. On a surface level, it's just a bit cuter and more appealing, but it's also a lot more consistently charming on like an art level. It's throwing new styles and ideas at you all the time, and I'd say trying to charm you rather than trying to weird you out. Which, yeah, you could argue isn't really better or worse in the art world, but I end up appreciating Loopy a lot more than Angela, and find its weirder visual ideas a lot cooler because it isn't constantly trying to be that way. Or a reverse comparison. Remember those shorts on the Amanda Show that were just completely stop motion and they were just horrendously ugly? Yeah, those really sucked, right? And like, yeah, of course, that was the point. But the entire Amanda Show didn't look like that. They were 1-minute sections every once in a while. I don't think Angela Anaconda is quite that ugly looking, but you see what I mean? And Angela was not the only show that ever looked like this. The art was obviously very inspired by Monty Python and a lot of ads that ran around that era. But again, like the Amanda Show, the Monty Python segments were pretty short, so they didn't really overstay their welcome. I think the real kicker in this show are the photoshopped faces. Like, Angela looks okay, but look at her next to Nanette. Nanette's eyes are so creepily big, I can't stand it. I feel like something, especially something I'm supposed to laugh and relate to, can't just constantly look weird or off-putting, or I'm just gonna get bored and irritated with it, or find it creepy. So yeah, naturally, kid me found it very creepy. Like I said earlier, it didn't help that I caught the show pretty infrequently, but the way the show looked really drove home the weird, uncanny feelings. I mean, it can and it will make it very, very distracting. I had to rewatch the first episode twice because I honestly could not follow what was happening. But that also may have to do with the writing itself. Speaking of, the first episode of Angela Anaconda is called Pet Peeves. Her class is letting the field trip be decided by a vote, and she's trying to get everyone to vote to see the monster truck rally while her bully, Nanette Manoir, and don't worry, Angela will make sure you know that name very well, wants to go to a French ballet thing. After a tie in their class, they decide to have a fundraising contest. Some wacky stuff happens involving a dog wash, and in the end, Nanette makes like $400 somehow. So Angela has a dream sequence where she kind of just tortures Nanette for a while. She wakes up and then they get cinnamon rolls or something. The show moves at like a lightning pace. Things are just constantly happening, and some of it is explained in the context of the episode, while some is explained via Angela just narrating it to the viewer, which makes it even harder to follow. I'm not kidding when I said I had to watch the first episode 3 times. First time, I was admittedly so distracted by how it looked I wasn't paying attention, but the second time, I was very much trying to follow it, and I had such a hard time figuring out why and how things went down as they did in this episode. On top of that, the way Angela talks is obnoxious and makes it even harder to follow. She has this weird, quirky way of speaking where she like over-explains things or says things in a weird order when explaining something.
Normally, I would say that the most fun part of the day is now. On account of it is recess, and we get to play tetherball, the most fun of games.
She calls everyone by their full names, which is just so irritating in my opinion. But yeah, this is kind of the structure of every episode I watched. Angela narrates about something that's happening that she's kind of excited for, and her bully, Nanette Manoir, ruins it by being stuck up, and then she dreams of, like, killing her or something. They mix it up sometimes, but this is most of the time the way it goes down. In a lot of ways, the plot of this show is Angela fucking hates Nanette Manoir. Even the intro starts with Angela being cute and singing her theme song, but as soon as Nanette comes in, completely off screen by the way, just not in Angela's way at all, she starts singing how much she fucking hates her.
My name is Angela, and you are not Nanette Manoir, is a stuck-up jerk-faced slut.
This is kind of what I meant by the show feels a little mean-spirited. Maybe the point of the show is a long-form character arc on Angela becoming less obsessed with people she hates and learns to appreciate the people that love her, but I kind of doubt it. But who cares about the actual writing? Is the show funny? That is obviously the most important aspect of a kid's show, right? Does Angela's quirky personality result in laughs? No, not at all. At least not for 28-year-old me. The show can sometimes be a little funny.
Hi, Dad.
Oh, hi, kids.
Can you give us some money?
Nope. So,
But I don't think I really laughed out loud once, and most of the time my face barely even perked up. The idea of humor is mostly just being annoying in this show, or making funny voices, which, surprise, surprise, are a lot less funny than they probably think they are. Maybe, just maybe, as a 7-year-old, I might have found this a little funny, but I kinda doubt that as well. I haven't really mentioned many of the characters beyond Angela, but as the show goes on, most of her classmates get a lot more time to shine and are, quirky, I guess. Funny? I don't know about that. But they sure are characters. Cartoon characters, kind of. I think my favorites are Gina Lash, who obviously is fat and likes to eat. Duh. Funny. Laugh. Haha.
Sorry, not interested.
But her smarter demeanor is kind of funny at times, and the girl voicing her does a pretty good job with the line deliveries, I must say. There's also this girl in their class whose entire joke is that she's Catholic, which is actually pretty funny at times, and honestly something even in 1999 was pretty daring to do. The Catholic Church specifically was very, very touchy about how they were depicted in media, and in a kids show, no less. I'm amazed that jokes like this were greenlit.
Well, even in the time I took those pennies out of Mark and Derek's penny loafers. Or the time I...
Aren't you forgetting something, Angela Anaconda? Pennies for the poor?
Oh.
And so credit where credit's due, this show can be somewhat charming sometimes, kind of rarely. But most of the time I describe the writing and pacing as annoying and confusing. I have like zero memories of what this show was actually like from when I was a kid, only what it looked like. Before the other day, I think the only thing I had seen from this show in any recent memory was the Digimon promo thing, which now rewatching it is really funny because it's basically just a mini Angela Anaconda episode, down to the background music and even the torture dream sequence. Wonderful. Anyways, I think I've bitched enough about this show and why it bothers me so much. It's been a weird feeling going back and watching this first episode, like this weird piece of my childhood was missing. Let's watch the second episode.
I am Ms. Yamagata, your guide. Okay, we start. We solar system. And question.
Okay, you know what? I think I'm good on Angela Anaconda, actually. I think I got my fix. Man, what a trip. Angela Anaconda, a show that existed as this weird anomaly in my brain for most of my life, now has a full breadth of context. And honestly, it hasn't changed too much. I think I still fully understand why my feelings towards this show were so hostile for so long, but you know, as I make this video, watch episodes, get B-roll, etc., the show has become a lot less unsettling. And at its core, it's just a silly, stupid Canadian kids show. It doesn't feel too far off from a PaperDawN or a Braceface, albeit with a very different art style. Actually, PaperDawN was also created by Sooo. Huh, interesting. They do share a lot of similarities in structure and writing. The more you know, I guess. And as I look more into the show and do more research about it, it's really just these creators wanting to make something new and different that could connect with kids in a unique way, which I honestly can't deny their success with that. This is 100% a cartoon that uniquely connected with me as a kid. Sadly, it wasn't a very pleasant relationship, but I'd be crazy to assume that that'd be the same for everyone. Don't get me wrong, this show is almost entirely hated. People hate this show on a deeper level than I dislike it even. But at the same time, reading comments on these YouTube uploads of the episodes, people have a lot of fondness for this show. There's a YouTuber named Amazon Kane who is by far Angela's strongest soldier. Her channel has a lot of really cool content involving this series, including interviews with Joanne Farone, which was pretty cool to see, honestly. She was even working on a reboot of the series, and it looked kinda half decent, actually. Amazing how adding a little bit of melanin to these little fuckers' skins helps make this style so much more appealing to me. As hard as this series turns my stomach, there may be something here that I'm not seeing, and I'd be insane to say it shouldn't exist or people should feel bad for enjoying it. Maybe when I was a kid, if I gave this show more of a chance, my brain wouldn't lump it with invasive insects these days. But you know what? If you enjoy this show and somehow enjoy the way this show looks, good for you. I definitely think it's unique, if anything, and I can't really think of any other show that looks quite like this. Wasn't there like a Teen Nick show that had an intro that looked like this, I think? Anyways, do you have any shows or pieces of media that exist as this weird, uncanny memory? Maybe it was Angela Anaconda. I could definitely see others having this same feeling about Angela Anaconda. Hope everyone has a good Halloween. Time to end this video with a jump scare. You ready? Nah, I wouldn't do that. Until next time.